The Chicago sun was too bright, too cheerful, for the grief I carried. I stood at the wrought iron gate of 247, Jacaranda Street, my black funeral dress clinging to my skin like a second layer of sorrow. I could still smell the damp earth of Phoenix, the scent of withered lilies that had graced my sister Grace's casket. I could still hear the choked cries of my nephews as they said goodbye to their mother. For 6 months, I had watched cancer steal her piece by piece. Now I was empty, a vessel filled only with exhaustion and the desperate need for home. I pushed the gate open, the familiar creak a sound I'd missed. But the sight that greeted me stopped the breath in my lungs. My home. The 2-story pale yellow house I'd bought with 35 years of scrubbing other people's offices. The house I'd painted that cheerful hue dreaming of a happy family. The house I'd gifted to my son Robert 3 years ago when he married Danielle, was now the setting of my own erasure. There, piled carelessly on the manicured lawn beside the blooming bougainvilleas I had planted myself, was my life. My clothes, sweaters, dresses, sensible shoes were tangled in heaps. Photographs of my late husband, Miguel, their glass frames glinting in the harsh light, were strewn about. The hand-knitted shawl from my grandmother, the one she gave me on her deathbed, was draped over a box. My children's baby records, their tiny handprints in faded clay, peeked out from under a toppled lamp. Everything I owned, every memory I cherished, treated like refuse waiting for collection. My purse slipped from my numb fingers, thudding on the cobblestone path. What? The whisper was all I could manage. The air punched from my chest. Then the front door opened, and Danielle appeared. She looked like she'd stepped from the pages of a catalog. A dress I knew cost more than my monthly pension. Hair freshly styled in soft waves, makeup flawless. She shimmered with health and leisure, a stark, cruel contrast to my own travel-worn, grief-ravaged form. She'd just left a salon. I'd just left a cemetery. "Oh, Mom, it's so good you're back." Her voice was a syrup of false concern, the tone she reserved for public performances. I couldn't speak. I gestured weakly at the devastation on my lawn. "We decided to do a deep clean out of the house," she explained, waving a manicured hand as if shooing a fly. "You know, all those old things took up so much space. And well, they're useless now." Useless. The word echoed in the hollow space grief had carved inside me. My memories. My history. Me. Danielle. I said, my voice cracking like dry timber. "Those are my belongings. My children's photo albums. My personal documents. My husband's clothes." "Oh, I know," she interrupted, her smile never wavering. "But we needed the space in your room. We're turning it into the baby's nursery. Didn't Robert tell you? I'm 3 months pregnant." The news was a physical blow, a sucker punch to my already bruised soul. Pregnant. My grandchild. And I was learning of it like this, standing amid the wreckage of my own life. "I need to talk to Robert," I managed. "He's at work, Mom. Gets home late." "But don't you worry," she chirped, linking her arm through mine with a familiarity that made my skin crawl. "We left a little spot for you. Come on, I'll show you." She led me, numb and compliant, around the side of the house to the back, to the small, standalone utility room we used for garden tools and bags of cement. She opened the door with a flourish. "Tajda." We cleaned it up a bit. Put in a folding bed. It's tiny, but it's enough. The room was a concrete cube, no more than 6 feet by 6. It smelled of damp earth and mildew. A single, grimy window faced a dark alley. The folding bed held a thin, stained mattress. A bare bulb hung from a wire. "We do need you to be discreet, though," Danielle added, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "With the baby on the way, the doctor says I must avoid all stress. We don't want anyone getting in the way." Something inside me, the last fragile thread holding my composure, snapped. But from the fracture, a new sensation emerged. Not sadness, but a cold, clear ignition. A quiet fury. I looked her directly in the eyes. The woman who had taken my son and was now discarding his mother. She stared back, expecting tears, supplication, grateful acceptance of her crumbs. Instead, I took a deep, steadying breath, finding a calm I didn't know I possessed. "You know what, Danielle? You're absolutely right. It is time for a clean-out. A deep clean-out of everything that no longer serves me." Her perfectly sculpted smile faltered for a millisecond. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, my fingers steady. I scrolled past missed calls from my other children, past a photo of Grace and me smiling, until I found the number I needed. "Mr. Mendel's, attorney at law. What are you doing?" Danielle asked, the fake sweetness leaching from her voice. "Cleaning up," I replied, my voice flat. "Exactly what you suggested." I pressed call and put the phone to my ear. The dial tone rang once, twice. As I waited, I held Danielle's gaze, refusing to look away. For the first time in 3 years, I did not shrink. In that moment, a fundamental truth crystallized. I had given this house out of love, but I had never, ever given away my dignity. And they were about to find out who really called the shots here. Mr. Mendel's answered on the third ring. "Carol? What's happened?" His voice, familiar and gruff with concern, was a lifeline. He knew about Grace. "Mr. Mendel's, I need to see you tomorrow morning. First thing. It's urgent." I spoke without taking my eyes off Danielle. Her face had transformed. The calculated, smug mask was gone, replaced by a narrow-eyed scrutiny. She looked dangerous. "Are you all right?" "No." I said the word simple and heavy. "But I'm going to be." I hung up. Danielle crossed her arms, the silky fabric of her dress pulling tight. "I don't know what you're planning, Mom," she said, the title a sneer. "But I'll remind you this house belongs to Robert, and I'm his wife. If you want to stay here, you'll follow our rules." I clenched my teeth, biting back the torrent of words. That every brick was paid for with the sweat of cleaning bathrooms. That Robert was 25 and penniless when I signed it over. That my love had been a gift, not a transaction. But I remained silent. I had learned in my 67 years that words without power are just noise. And I needed to reclaim my power first. "Okay," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "I'll stay in the utility room." She blinked, surprised. She had expected a fight, tears, drama. My acquiescence threw her. "Oh, good. I'm glad you understand." She smoothed her dress, regaining her composure. "Another thing. The refrigerator is full. You'll need to buy your own food and keep it in your room. We can't be sharing the kitchen at all hours." The doctor was very clear about my stress levels. I nodded slowly. "Of course. No problem." "Perfect. Well then, welcome to your new space." With a final, hip-swaying walk that screamed victory, she retreated into the main house. The door clicked shut behind her, and only then, in the damp, dark silence of the concrete box, Did I allow myself to cry? I wept for Grace, for the long, painful goodbye. I wept for Miguel, gone 10 years but whose absence was a permanent ache. I wept for the strong, proud woman I had been. The one who raised 3 children alone, who worked until her bones ached, who built a home from nothing. And I wept for Robert, my firstborn, who once hugged me and whispered, "Mom, you're my hero." When had that boy vanished? I sat on the folding bed. The musty smell filled my nostrils. The damp-stained walls seemed to press in. There wasn't a hook, a shelf, a single sign of permanence. This was not a room. It was a storage closet for a person deemed obsolete. Then, through the fog of grief, a memory surfaced. My mother, raising 5 of us after my father vanished. Her hands, raw and chapped, holding my face. Mija, a woman's strength isn't in what she has. It's in what she can rebuild when everything is taken from her. I wiped my tears with the back of my hand, the skin papery and thin. I stood up, my knees protesting. I took out my phone again, but this time I opened the camera. I took pictures of the room, the stained mattress, the bare bulb, the concrete floor. I went outside and photographed my belongings scattered on the lawn. The disrespect frozen in digital detail. I photographed the bougainvilleas, a vibrant contrast to the scene of destruction. If life had taught me anything, it was that the truth needed proof. That night, Robert's car pulled into the driveway just after 11. I heard the engine cut, the car door slam, the muffled voices from inside the house. Danielle's sharp laugh, Robert's lower murmur. I waited, a foolish hope fluttering in my chest. Surely he would come. Surely he would ask about Grace, about the funeral, about me. He did not. At midnight, desperation overrode pride. I slipped from the utility room, bare feet silent on the cold tiles of the hallway that used to echo with my children's laughter. I stood before the master bedroom door, the one that had been mine and Miguel's. I knocked softly. "Robert." Silence. "Robert, Mijo, I need to talk to you." After a moment, the door opened a crack. Robert peered out. He looked exhausted, shadows pooling under his eyes, his face thinner than I remembered. "Mom, it's late." Late. The word was a choked whisper. "Robert, they threw all my things on the lawn. They put me in the utility room. You didn't even tell me Danielle is pregnant." He looked down, unable to meet my gaze. "Mom, I was going to tell you, but you were in Phoenix with Aunt Grace, and it just never felt like the right time." "I just buried my sister," I said. Each word a stone dropped between us. "I came home broken, and I find I've been treated like garbage." "It's not personal, Mom," he said, rubbing his eyes. "We just need the space. With the baby coming, things have to change." Change. The hope curdled into disbelief. "Robert, I bought this house. I gave it to you because I thought we'd be a family here. And we are, Mom. But Danielle, she's stressed. The pregnancy has been hard. The doctor says we shouldn't upset her." "And what about me?" The question hung in the dim hallway, fragile and devastating. "Don't I matter?" Robert sighed, a sound of profound weariness. "Of course you matter. But you have to understand. Danielle is my family now. My priority. You always said when you get married, your wife comes first." Each word was a precise incision, severing another cord. He was using my own lessons, meant to build a strong marriage, as a weapon against me. "Not like this, son. I breathed. Not like this. Mom, please. We're tired. We'll talk tomorrow, okay? Try to be understanding. And he closed the door. The soft click was louder than any slam. I stood in the darkness, trembling. The boy whose fever I'd cooled with washcloths, whose skin knees I'd kissed, whose dreams I'd championed, had just shut me out. I drifted back to the utility room like a ghost. But I did not cry again. The well of tears had run dry, replaced by a new, solid substance, determination. A silent, simmering fury. The absolute certainty that this injustice would not stand. I sat on the bed and opened the small drawer of the rickety nightstand I'd salvaged from the lawn. Inside, wrapped in a plastic bag, was my secret weapon, an old, leather-bound notebook. For years, since the day I gave Robert the house, I had kept a private record. Not to control, but to care. A mother's instinct to protect her investment, her child's future. With trembling hands, I turned to the most recent entries. And as I read, my blood turned to ice, then to fire. The numbers told a story of their own. Over the past 8 months, massive, regular transfers had been bleeding the joint account dry. $4,500 in January for a living room remodel. $5,200 in February for new furniture. $3,800 in March with no description. $6,100 in April for a trip to Miami. The list went on, a hemorrhage of cash. $4,800, $5,400, $7,300, $7,900. I tallied it in my head, my heart hammering against my ribs. Over $45,000. In 8 months. Robert made good money as an engineer, but not this good. A cold dread seeped into my bones. I fumbled through the plastic bag for another document. The last statement from my retirement savings account. The $60,000 nest egg I'd entrusted to him for emergencies. I unfolded it, my vision blurring. Current balance. $8,954.21. The room tilted. I slid to the floor, my back against the damp wall, struggling to draw breath. They hadn't just taken my space. They had plundered my future. They had funded their new life, Danielle's dresses, their trips, their renovations, with the money I earned on my knees. And I had been too busy holding my dying sister's hand to notice. The betrayal was so vast, so intimate, it was paralyzing. But then, from the depths of that paralysis, a new resolve was forged, hardened in the fires of this ultimate deceit. They thought I was broken. They thought I was beaten. They had no idea that the woman in the utility room, clutching her evidence, was no longer a victim. She was a strategist. And they had just handed her the first weapon. The next morning, I washed my face in the utility sink in the yard, the water bitingly cold. Danielle had, as promised, locked the door to the main bathroom. I put on my best black dress, the same one from the funeral, and pulled my hair into a severe bun. When you go to war for what is yours, you must look dignified. At 9 o'clock sharp, I entered the oak-paneled office of Mr. Mendels. He was older now, his hair white, but his eyes were the same sharp blue. He embraced me tightly. "Carol, my dear, I'm so sorry about Grace." "Thank you, Samuel," I said, using his first name for the first time, needing the solidarity. "But I'm not here about that. I'm here about this." I laid my evidence on his polished desk. The notebook with its damning figures, the bank statements, the photographs of my lawn and my concrete cell. I told him everything. The funeral, the lawn, the utility room, the pregnancy announcement, the closed door, the missing money. As I spoke, his expression shifted from professional concern to deep, quiet anger. When I finished, he leaned back, steepling his fingers. This is serious, Carol. Legally and morally. First, the house. The deed. I handed it over. He read it carefully, his eyes scanning the lines, and a faint, grim smile touched his lips. Carol, the house is still 100% in your name. Robert never completed a formal transfer of title. You gave him permission to live there, a tenancy at will. That means it's still your property. You can revoke that permission at any time. The first flare of hope, bright and painful. So I can ask them to leave? You can tell them to leave. They are, legally speaking, tenants without a lease. Now the money. He picked up the bank statements. These transfers. Did you authorize them? No. Never. Robert had full access to the account. I gave him a card years ago. But did you sign anything making him a co-owner? A joint account holder? I thought back. No. The account is solely in my name. He just had a linked card. Mr. Mendels nodded slowly. This is delicate. If Robert made those transfers without your explicit authorization, it could be considered misappropriation of funds. In a family context, it's still fraud. The word hung in the air. Fraud. My son. I don't want him in jail, Samuel. I just want it to stop. I want what's fair. And it will be. But to negotiate fairly, you need power. Here's what we do. He took a legal pad. 1. Today we change all passwords and secure your accounts. You are the sole access. 2. We create a formal inventory of all assets that were in the house when you gifted it, including that antique furniture. Its unauthorized sale is conversion of your property. 3. We formally notify Robert he has 30 days to vacate, or he signs a formal lease agreement with monthly rent and strict terms. Rent. The concept felt alien, cruel. From my own son? He looked at me, his gaze unwavering. Carol, your son allowed you to be put in a tool shed. He spent your life savings without a word. He sold your mother's inheritance. Does he deserve to live in your house for free? The truth of it was a clean, sharp cut. No, iwisparat. He does not. If he refuses the lease, we begin eviction proceedings. With this evidence, a judge will rule quickly. He paused. Do you have other assets? Something independent. I remembered the small apartment in the old factory district, Miguel's legacy, which I'd been renting out quietly for years. Robert didn't know about the separate account where the $1,800 monthly rent accumulated. Yes, I said. I have my own income. Mr. Mendels smiled fully then. Perfect. That changes everything. It means you have options. You don't have to go back. The idea was terrifying. Living alone at 67. But the image of that utility room rose before me. What do I want? I echoed his question, staring out at the city. I wanted my son back. I wanted respect. I wanted my home to feel like home again. But more than anything, I wanted them to know I was not disposable. I want justice, I said finally. I want them to learn you can't treat people this way. Then we'll get it. But be prepared, Carol. This will hurt. They will call you names. They will try to make you the villain. When you fight back, people show their true colors. I thought of my mother's furniture, sold for a pittance. I thought of the door closing in my face. I'm ready, I said, and for the first time I believed it. I left his office 3 hours later with a plan, changed passwords, and a fragile new spine. I bought myself a coffee and a sweet roll, sitting on a park bench, watching life go on. They thought they had broken me. They thought I would submit. But a woman who has rebuilt her life from nothing knows how to fight. The war had just been declared. I returned to Jacaranda Street at 6 p.m., carrying bags of groceries, a small electric hot plate, a pot, some basics. If I was to be a tenant, I would be a self-sufficient one. As I entered, I heard a chorus of unfamiliar voices in the living room. Peeking in, I saw a scene of domestic performance. Danielle, radiant in an expensive pink dress, held court. Flanking her were her parents, Mr. Armstrong, a bulky man with a pompous air, and Mrs. Beatrice, thin and elegant, her eyes perpetually scanning for flaws. Robert sat stiffly in a chair, looking like a hostage. "Mom." Danielle's voice was a symphony of fake delight. "So glad you're here. We're having a family dinner. My parents wanted to understand our situation better." Our situation. As if I were a problem to be managed. I tried to move toward the back, but Danielle intercepted me, her grip firm on my arm. "Oh no, you must join us. We need to talk." Trapped, I sat at my own dining table. Danielle served an elaborate meal. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension. "Mrs. Carroll," Mr. Armstrong began, dabbing his mouth. "Danielle tells us there have been some misunderstandings." Misunderstandings? I kept my voice level. "Yes," Mrs. Beatrice cut in, her tone surgical. "Young people need their space, especially with a baby coming. At your age, you should be thinking of making things easier. There are lovely retirement communities." So that was it. The nursing home pitch. I looked at Robert. He studied his plate as if it contained the secrets of the universe. "Robert," I said, my voice cutting through the clatter of silverware. "What do you think about this?" He looked up, his eyes hollow. "Mom, I just want peace." "You want peace while you plan to send me to a home?" "It's not a home, Mom," Danielle interjected. "It's a luxury community with activities, people your own age." "I'm not interested." A heavy silence fell. Mr. Armstrong cleared his throat. "Be reasonable, Mrs. Carroll. Your cycle is complete. It's their turn to live." Then Mrs. Beatrice went for the jugular. "And about these bank account confusions?" "There is no confusion," I said, my voice clear in the quiet room. "I changed the passwords to my accounts. The money you've been spending, over $45,000 of it, is mine." Danielle's fork clattered to her plate. "You see, Robert? This is what I mean. She's being irrational." "Why would I do that, Mom? That money is for the family." Robert finally spoke, a plea in his voice. "That money was my retirement. Money you spent without asking." "What did you buy, Danielle? More dresses? Another trip?" Danielle's face flushed mottled red. "How dare you?" "I dare," I said, standing up. "Because you sold my mother's furniture without asking. You threw my life on the lawn. You stole from me while I was burying my sister." "Mom, please, not in front of them." Robert stood, hands outstretched. Mr. Armstrong slammed a fist on the table. This is uncivilized. Is it? I turned my fury on him. Is throwing my things away civilized? Is theft civilized? I took a breath, my gaze locking on Danielle. This house. It's still in my name. Robert never did the paperwork. Legally, every inch of it is still mine. The silence this time was absolute, profound. Danielle stared, uncomprehending. What? You heard me. This is my property. Robert lives here by my permission. A permission I can revoke. The color drained from Danielle's face. She whirled on Robert. Tell me she's lying. You promised me this house. Robert looked at her, then at me, his shoulders slumping in defeat. It's true. I never finished the transfer. You told me you had assets. I married you because... She clapped a hand over her mouth, but the damage was done. The raw, ugly truth was out. Mrs. Beatrice stood, a study in outrage. Armstrong, we're leaving. I will not be subjected to this. They're not accusations, I said coldly. They are facts. And I have the documents to prove every one. Mr. Armstrong pointed a shaking finger at me. You are a terrible mother. The words, meant to wound, instead solidified my resolve. A real mother teaches respect. I did my job. The fact he didn't learn is on him, not me. I turned and walked out, leaving chaos in my wake. Danielle's hysterics, the Armstrong sputtering exit, Robert's desperate attempts to placate. In my utility room, I leaned against the door, trembling from the adrenaline. The first battle was fought. Later, past 11, violent pounding shook my flimsy door. Mom, open up. Please. Robert's voice was ragged. I opened it. He was a wreck, disheveled, eyes wild. Mom, please. Danielle's hysterical. The baby, you can't take the house. I never wanted to take anything, Robert. I gave it all. And you threw it in my face. It was a mistake. Danielle's mistake. I didn't know about the lawn. You knew, I said, my voice terrifyingly calm. You closed the door on me. You said she was your priority. He fell to his knees, sobbing. Forgive me. I was a coward. A bad son. Please don't put us on the street. I looked at him, this stranger weeping on my concrete floor. The little boy was gone. I'm not leaving you on the street, I said. But tomorrow you come to Mr. Mendel's office. We sign a contract. You pay rent. You repay every dollar. And Danielle gets a job. He agreed desperately, a man clutching at straws. As he left, he asked the question that haunted us both. Do you hate me, Mom? No, Robert, I said, exhausted. I don't hate you, but I don't recognize you either. I closed the door. That night, I slept knowing I had leverage. But the victory felt like ash. The meeting in Mr. Mendel's office was a tense, formal affair. Danielle came, wearing sunglasses as if in mourning. When the lawyer laid out the facts, the deed, the fraud, the legal options, her composure shattered. You lied to me, she screamed at Robert, the mask of sweet daughter-in-law gone forever. You said the house was yours. The ensuing argument was ugly, a tableau of mutual betrayal. They blamed each other for the spending, the lies, the mess. I sat silently, watching the foundation of their marriage crumble to dust. The contract was signed. $1,200 monthly rent. $1,000 monthly repayment of the $45,000 debt. Robert signed with a trembling hand. Danielle refused until he forced her. They left without a word to me. I had won, but the cost was my son. The emptiness that followed was a new kind of grief. 3 days later, that grief turned physical. I woke in the utility room with a terrifying pressure on my chest, a vice squeezing the breath from my lungs. I tried to call out, to bang on the wall, but darkness swallowed me. I woke in a hospital bed to the steady beep of a heart monitor. A minor heart attack, the doctor said. Extreme, prolonged stress. My neighbor, Miss Lucy, had found me. We notified your family, the nurse said gently. 2 of your children are here from out of town. Robert? I asked. She hesitated. Your son Robert was called 7 hours ago. He hasn't come. The pain of that was sharper than any cardiac event. But then Marianne and George burst in. My lawyer daughter from Denver, my engineer son from Austin. They had dropped everything. Their love was a tangible, healing force. Through tears, I told them everything. Their reactions were a storm of protective fury. I'm going to kill him, Marianne seethed. George looked ready to drive to Jacaranda Street that instant. It's handled, I insisted, showing them the contract. I also revealed my secret. The rental apartment, my independent income. Mom, George said, stunned. How many more surprises do you have? They're not surprises. They're a widow's precautions. The doctor was blunt. Eliminate the stress source or the next heart attack would be fatal. He prescribed, in effect, a separation from Robert and the situation at Jacaranda Street. With Marianne's fierce support, I rented a small, clean apartment using my rental income. It was modest, but it was mine, peaceful. Robert never called, never visited. The finality of his abandonment was a wound, but in that sterile hospital room, I had accepted a hard truth. I had been seeking love in a place where it no longer lived. As I settled into my new, quiet life, a call from Mr. Mendels brought news. Robert was making his payments. Danielle had gotten a job, a perfume salesgirl, and Robert wanted to know if he could visit. A fragile thread of hope. I told him to come for Sunday dinner. But before that dinner could happen, a different visitor arrived, bearing secrets that would detonate the fragile remains of Robert's world. It was Miss Beatrice, Danielle's mother, who came to my apartment, a broken woman bearing a dossier of damnation. Over coffee, her hands shaking, she revealed the truth. Danielle's compulsive shopping, her massive hidden debts, her history of scamming men. And then the ultimate lie. The pregnancy was fake. Medical records proved Danielle could not conceive. Text messages showed her planning the deception, buying fake tests, all to secure the house and solve her debts. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. Robert had been played completely. His desire for a family weaponized against him, used to justify his cruelty to me. That night I called Robert. Come to my apartment. Bring Danielle. It's urgent. When they arrived, Danielle's arrogance was a thin veneer over clear anxiety. With Marianne by my side, I presented the evidence. The medical records. The text messages. The confession to her mother. Denial, then bluster, then collapse. Confronted with an ultimatum for a real ultrasound, Danielle finally broke. I'm not pregnant, she whispered. I never was. The sound Robert made was one of pure, animal agony. His world, already cracked, shattered entirely. He ordered her out, his body trembling with rage and devastation. When she was gone, Slamming the door on her fantasy, Robert collapsed on my floor, weeping uncontrollably. I knelt and held him, my heart breaking for his brokenness. "I'm sorry, Mom," he sobbed into my shoulder. "You were right. About everything. I was an idiot." "Shoo," I whispered, rocking him. "It's over now. Will you ever forgive me?" "I already have," I said, meaning it. "From the moment you chose to seek the truth." We cried together on the floor of my small apartment, mother and son amidst the ruins of his choices. The path to rebuilding would be long, but for the first time, it was honest. The aftermath was swift and severe. Robert filed for divorce. With the evidence of fraud and deception, it was uncontested. Danielle's father, Mr. Armstrong, cut her off completely upon learning the truth. Miss Beatrice, racked with guilt, testified against her own daughter. Danielle, left with nothing, soon reverted to old patterns and was eventually arrested for fraud against another man. Robert moved into a small studio. He was a shadow, but a sober, clear-eyed one. He came for Sunday dinners. We talked, really talked, for the first time in years. He spoke of his fear of being alone, of failing, of how Danielle's attention had felt like validation. He was doing the hard work of facing himself. One Sunday, 6 months after the storm began, he handed me an envelope. Inside were legal documents, transferring the house on Jacaranda Street back to me, irrevocably and unconditionally. "It's yours, Mom. It always was. I need to build my own life with my own hands, not with things you gave me." I cried then, tears of relief, of sorrow, of a fractured hope knitting itself back together. "Where will you live?" "In my apartment. I'll save. I'll buy my own place. Let me do this. Let me show you I learned." I hugged him, my son who was finally growing up. A year to the day after I returned from Grace's funeral, all 3 of my children were with me in the garden of my house. The bougainvilleas were in riotous bloom. We drank lemonade in the sun. "A year ago," I said, "I thought I had lost everything." Robert flinched, but I reached over and squeezed his hand. I lost the illusions, the lies, and when they were gone, I found what was real. I looked at Marianne, George, and Robert. We toasted to peace, to family, to rebuilding. That night, alone in the house that was truly mine again, I stood in the garden. The same stars shone. The woman who had stood here a year ago, shattered and discarded, was gone. In her place was someone harder, wiser, but also softer in the right places. I had learned that dignity is not given, it is defended. That respect is not begged for, it is demanded. That love does not humiliate, it lifts up. "Thank you, Gracie," I whispered to the wind. "Now I know how to live." And I did. Not without scars, but with peace, with self-respect, with the unwavering knowledge that it is never too late to clean out what no longer serves you, and to fight fiercely and without apology for the life you deserve.